you questioning and pondering the nature of our physical reality.
I think I may have died. I got into a bike accident when I was in Bali, and I don't even remember crashing into a stationary van. But I did. Everything happened so quickly. Next thing I know, my motorbike was on the ground, and my ex and I were just standing in shock, and we had some cuts, bruises. Since that accident, I swear things feel so different. I was convinced I should have died, or maybe I did die. But that was a really weird day, and it was 5 months ago. I just feel like I did die, and I teleported into another universe. Because at the exact moment I was about to crash, I didn't see or remember anything. It just happened, as if I skipped worlds. My quantum immortality experiences. I have for sure died twice, quite possibly 4 times. Of the two, I'm very confident the first one happened in about 1998, and the other in 2018 or so. In the first instance, my best friend and I were driving gravel back roads in the middle of the night, 40 miles between towns in rural South Dakota. I was admittedly going far too fast, and we came over a small rise, and there was a T in the road where you could turn left or right, but straight forward was a driveway for a farmhouse. The driveway went for about a half a block or so and then transitioned into a cornfield. I remember saying, "Oh, and starting to slow down as we started flying through the very tall corn. It was late summer, and the corn stalks were basically full grown. The sound as my car plowed over the corn stalks and into the field sounded like the most vicious hailstorm ever. The experience was completely overwhelming to the senses. The sights and sounds of flying headlong at high speeds into a fully grown, densely planted cornfield cannot be overstated. This is where things get weird. The next thing I remember was sitting at a stop sign where we would turn onto the main highway in the area. It was nearly completely silent, with only the light hum of the engine creating any sound. This was at least several miles away from the field we had just flown into. My blinker was on to the left, and the car was just sitting still with my foot on the brakes. The lack of motion and dead silence was, for reasons unknown, also absolutely overwhelming. I felt extremely disoriented and discombobulated, and was honestly not certain how I had come to this point, and was even concerned that perhaps I had blacked out or something. I just was not certain how we had arrived where we were currently sitting. At this point, I did not remember flying through that intersection or crashing through the cornfield. That memory was gone, either blocked or unremembered. I looked over at my friend, and again said what the F. He had a dumbfounded look on his face as well, and shrugged his shoulders, and after a moment said, "I think we go left." I actually got out of the car and found the Northern Star to make sure we would be turning the correct direction onto the highway. I also surveyed the situation, grasping for some semblance of understanding. We were surprisingly close to the town I lived in at the time. In short order, we made it to my apartment, and both crashed as it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and we had had a very long day. I was dead sober for this entire experience, but I did not feel right, and I knew something was amiss. We got up the next day about mid-morning and got back in my car to drive to my friend's town, where he was attending college, which was going to be about a 5-hour drive. We needed gas, and I stopped at a station to fill up and get other miscellaneous supplies. My car I was driving at the time was old enough to be using a bit of oil, so I almost always checked the oil. Again, at this moment, My memories of the cornfield and all that were completely gone. I popped the hood and went around to the front of the car to get at the engine. I lifted the hood and glanced down. I have never been so absolutely baffled and immediately enlightened at the same time. A light breeze would have knocked me over. The engine compartment was almost completely chock full of corn stalks. My knees went weak, and I became very, very heady, and I felt to perform several full spins. Once again, I very loudly and firmly proclaimed what the called my friend, so he would come around to the front of the car. The very instant I saw the corn stalks in the engine compartment, the entire accident flashbacked to me. I don't remember the point of death, but I remember all the other details, including being very confused sitting at the stop sign by the highway and the brutal contrast between flying through the field and sitting still at the stop sign. My friend said to me, "Do you remember?" I said, "Yeah." We talked it over multiple times during our long drive, and we had the exact same memories. His memory also returned to him the second he saw the corn in the car as well. A couple months later, I tried to drive the same back roads that we had been driving to find that intersection and the farmhouse, and the driveway, and the cornfield. There were a couple of very unique specific details to the location where the accident happened that should have made it very easy to recognize and find. I was never able to locate a spot like this on any of the roads anywhere around where we would have been driving. Microsoft had also just released their satellite imagery, and I scoured everywhere between those two cities, and I have never ever been able to find the location where we had our accident. I honestly don't think it exists on this timeline. Another time I was out in the middle of the night again, in a very rural area during a thunderstorm, to take lightning photos. I'm pretty sure that I saw the lightning bolt that killed me prior to my timeline jump. I remember sitting in the car and finishing my styrofoam cup of gas station coffee and hopping out of the car to smoke a cigarette and go pee on the gravel road. Most of the lightning was several miles to the west, and it wasn't even actually raining where I was parked. I was not worried about lightning safety at this point. Now, the very large power lines that take electricity to the town I was living in were right by this road. I've been pretty close to a couple of lightning strikes. I'm no stranger. I remember getting that very powerful static feeling, and the hair on my head and on my arms started to stand up. I knew what was coming. I started to say, "Oh," and before I could even get my profanity out, I remember a profoundly huge snap sound and a blinding white light. The next thing I remember was sitting in my parked car with my nearly full cup of coffee in my hand. I remember thinking that I wanted to smoke a cigarette and I needed to go pee, so I chugged the lukewarm coffee and started to get out of the car. The second my feet hit the ground, I felt the most massive wave of déjà vu I have ever experienced. I nervously glanced up beside the road to look at the power lines, but the spot I had stopped previously was about a mile down the road, and the power lines had turned a corner and not followed the road down to this point. I glanced down the road to what I thought was the spot I had previously been in, and just as I looked down the road, lightning struck the power line in multiple massive flashes, and I even saw the lightning bolt jump down to the ground under the power line. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I witnessed the very lightning bolt that killed me. I have a couple of other experiences where I'm pretty sure I died, but the situations were ambiguous enough that I'm not certain. So you are not alone, and if you ask around, you'll be surprised by the number of people who have confusing, odd experiences where things are not quite as they seem. There have been many people delighted to finally gain the proper vocab word to label their experience: quantum immortality. Glitch in the Matrix or quantum immortality? This happened 24 years ago in the year 1999. I completely forgot about this incident until I read a Reddit post very similar to my own experience, and it jogged my memory. This will be a long story, but I would really appreciate your comments as to what actually happened that day. To those of you who read to the end, I thank you in advance. I was home from college for the summer visiting my family. One day I asked my mom to borrow her car so I can go visit my friends who stayed at the dorm during summer vacation. She said I can have it, but I need to be home before 10 a.m. the next morning because she needs the car the next day. My college was about an hour's drive from my house on a good day. Some friends of mine would make it in 45 minutes. The fastest driving time I had heard of was 35 minutes. Late at night, no traffic, driving like the wind. I got to my friend's house, our dorm residence, in the early evening, and we decided to drive down to the nearby casino, about a 30 minutes drive, to pass the night. We were a group of about 5, 2 of my roommates, 2 other friends from our dorm, and I. We had a great time playing on the quarter slot machines. Once we all were tired and were ready to leave, we head to the lobby doors and realized it's early morning, around 5 a.m., and it's pouring rain. It was raining so hard we could barely see the first row of parked cars just in front of the lobby. We waited for about 30 minutes or so for the rain to slow to a drizzle so we can drive home, and made the 30-minute drive without incident. When we got to the dorm, it was around 6 a.m., and the rain was pouring down again, so I resolved to wait it out as long as I could. I still had to return the car to my mom, and I had at least an hour's drive, if not longer due to the weather. When I left the dorm, it was 7 a.m. One of my roommates stayed up with me until I left, and we both noted the time as I was leaving. I got to my car a few minutes later and started driving towards the highway. I was really tired since we basically pulled an all-nighter at the casino, but I had to drive home to return the car to my mom. I do not recommend driving tired. I told myself I'll be fine. I cranked up the radio to my favorite station, lit a cigarette, opened the window for some fresh air, and so off I went. Again, please do not drive while tired. Within 10 minutes or so, as I'm driving on the highway, the rain starts pouring again. It was so bad I could barely see the wipers of my car. They were at the fastest setting, and it's like they weren't doing anything. But the rain was kind of hypnotizing. The rhythm sort of started lulling me to sleep, but I didn't really notice. My blinks kept getting slower and slower. What happened next was in a span of about 3-5 seconds, not more. It's kind of hard to explain. I was awake one moment, sort of, and the next, my consciousness woke up to darkness. Kind of like when you wake up in the morning, but you haven't opened your eyes yet, and you are slowly starting to be aware of your surroundings, how comfortable and warm you are in your bed, etc. That's basically what happened. I am aware of being awake, but it's dark. I don't even notice my eyes are closed. I'm comfortable, but I seem to be in a sitting position. My hands are holding on to something, but I'm not sure what it is exactly. I'm just really comfortable, and I don't want it to change. I kept thinking, just 5 more minutes. I don't know for how long my eyes were actually closed. Suddenly I hear a really, really loud crash, almost sounding like a clap, but unlike anything I ever heard before. It sounded like metal on metal, but I wasn't sure. It got me to open my eyes, and the first thing I noticed is that I'm in my car, and all I see from the window is a wave of water heading towards my windshield really fast. When it hit the windshield of the car, it sounded like the glass should have broken from the impact. It was the loudest slap sound I have ever heard, before or since. I'm in momentary shock as I take in my surroundings. I'm still in my car, driving perfectly straight in the leftmost lane. On my left is a concrete barrier just a couple of feet away. On my right, I was just overtaken by a huge 18-wheeler truck. That is what made the wave slap my windshield. Heart pounding, I rubbed my eyes and forced them open as far as they would go, determined to stay awake. I turned the music louder and opened the window to let the rain hit me in the face, along with some much-needed fresh air. The entire time I was thinking, holy shit, I could have died. I probably should have died. Then another thought hit me. The first and second claps was about 1 second. Me hearing the loud clap, opening my eyes to a wave that crashes to the window with another but different sounding loud clap. But this wasn't the craziest part yet. Since the rain was very strong, I wasn't driving more than 50 to 60 kilometers to the usual 100 kilometers. This means that the trip should have taken twice as long as it normally would. I figured I should be home by 9 a.m. at the latest. The rest of the drive was uneventful, and I made it to my building, drove into the very large garage and all the way in the back to my parents' parking spot. Then I walked back around to the elevators by the entrance and took the elevator to the 19th floor, walked down a long hallway to my apartment, went into my room, and crashed on the bed. Right before I passed out from fatigue and probably shock, I remembered to send my roommate a text message to let her know I made it home safely. I was so tired, I didn't even check what the time was. I just crashed. I woke up to a bunch of messages from my roommate. I don't remember them verbatim, but they were something like, "What? No way. You must be joking. Where are you? Hello? How did you get home so fast? No way you're already home. Are you okay?" It takes me a while to figure out what she's talking about, while remembering my harrowing journey from the morning, because it was then that I noticed the time of the text that I had sent her before I went to sleep. It was showing at 7:20 a.m. There is no way that is possible to travel around 90 kilometers in a span of 20 minutes in a rainstorm, where you can't even see the lanes on the road or even the hood of your car, while trying desperately not to fall asleep, and apparently failing at that. I don't know what to make of this. After reading a whole bunch of other stories on this subreddit, I'm pretty sure it may have been either a case of quantum immortality or a glitch in the Matrix. However, ever since that day, I have been experiencing all kinds of paranormal phenomena through the years. I think I died in 2019. I found out about QI a few days ago, and I've been thinking about this ever since. I'm not a very good storyteller, but I'll try my best to describe my experience. Back in January 2019, I got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. It was just starting to develop, and it hadn't spread to other parts yet. Because of this, doctors said I had to have surgery the next day to remove it. This was after approximately 2 months of rigorous testing. So I went into surgery the next day, and the head surgeon said she wasn't comfortable operating alone because my cancerous tumor was so big. It was about 10 centimeters. My waist is only 22 inches around. Basically, this tumor was from my side to my belly button. I was worried, but I trusted them, because what else was I going to do, LOL? When I was knocked out with anesthesia, I felt like I was trapped in some sort of void. There was nothing but darkness surrounding me. I couldn't feel my body, but I realized I had no body. It felt like I was pure consciousness, but I felt relaxed. I kept thinking I could spend eternity like this. It felt like I was floating in nothingness for weeks, and I was content. I've been under anesthesia before, and I've never felt like that. When I woke up, I was told there were some complications with the surgery, so it took an extra few hours. This is where I think I died. It was supposed to be a pretty simple surgery. The doctor said she's done it many times before. Afterwards, everything was different. My parents' personalities changed. My twin changed. The assistant surgeon changed. The hospital changed. My living situation. Suddenly, I had pets. Literally, everything changed. Suddenly, I was deathly allergic to bees, despite loving bees my whole life and wanting to be a beekeeper. I got into college at 16 despite never being studious before. My family used to be so supportive and loving, but now they're pretty cold. I was in a loving relationship beforehand, and then my boyfriend turned emotionally abusive and manipulative. I speak some Chinese now, too, the same level as a Chinese elementary school student, which is the weirdest detail to me, as nobody else on this subreddit mentioned suddenly knowing a different language. And now the pandemic, which is going on for way too long. This timeline just feels wrong. I feel like I don't belong here. Why did I have to go to this timeline? Asterisk. Died in a car crash. Then we respawned. I think I might have shared this already, but I need to go more into detail with what happened. About 6-8 years ago, my friend Giovanni and I left my house to go get some late-night McDonald's. You know, just as young fellas do at 2 a.m. after a night of partying, etc. We got into his white Mustang, left the neighborhood, and began driving on one of the main roads towards McDonald's, which was about 2 miles away. As we cross an intersection just about half a mile away from McDonald's, we get slammed by another car and thrown, and we proceed to roll. All I remember from the impact is that the car was speeding very fast. The impact was brutal. Glass shards flew everywhere, and the sound of plastic and metal scraping the asphalt. We died upon impact. We were gone. Then it all just went black. I saw that the car was annihilated looking at it from above. The scene was distressing. Then just as soon as the scene played out of our deaths, it abruptly ended, and we automatically went back, and we were both standing at the front door, about to leave for McDonald's. I look over at Gio, and Gio is tearing up and shaking with his hand on the doorknob. I say, "Bro, what the fuck was that? If we leave and go right now, we're going to die in a car crash." All he replied with was something along the lines of, "I know." Gio was shaking terribly, and I felt sick to my stomach. We had both just lived out our deaths. We both stepped away from the door and walked back into my family room and sat on the couch and didn't say a word to each other and just stared off into the distance. I had lived my own death, and so did he. We both knew it, and we both had no idea how to explain it. The best way I can explain it is it felt like a dream, where it's one of those almost too real of a dreams. We assuredly left the house and almost made it to McDonald's, but we got hit at an intersection, then flashed back almost immediately to my house. If y'all have seen the episode of Rick and Morty where Morty gets a do-over control, it was exactly like that. died on the corner. One day while I was out there doing my thing, I saw a van coming straight at me. It jumps the curb and slams into me, and I feel it crush me against the electrical box controlling the street lights. I see a quick flash as the traffic lights flick off, then black out. I gasp, and I'm still on the corner, and nothing has happened. No van or anything. Well, I was a little shaken up, so I decided to pack it up and walk back to the store for a break. I walk no more than 15 feet away from the corner when I hear a crash. I looked back, and a van just hopped the curb into the electrical box, and I watched the traffic lights flick off. Needless to say, I took the day off. Still think about that from time to time. Died, and came back to kind of the same life, but different dimension. Any theories? Before telling my story, I want you guys to take in mind that English is not my native language, so there might be a few mistakes. So what I'm about to tell you guys, I haven't told anyone except for when I wrote down my story and sent it to a podcast that tells creepy, true stories in my country. A little backstory first. I was born with a heart condition that makes my heart beat very fast sometimes, and it sometimes also ends up in a sort of heart attack. On a few occasions when that happens, I obviously end up at the emergency and get hospitalized for a few days. A few years back, I got this sort of heart attack. In the ambulance on my way to the hospital, I could feel that I was going to die and made peace with it. Not because I wanted to die, but I was just ready and not scared at all. A few hours later, having no idea if my heart stopped and if I died, I woke up and wasn't feeling very good, obviously. But something was different. I had the strangest feeling in my gut, and I could just tell something was off. Like I was trapped in someone else's body, only that it was my body. Very hard to explain, but maybe you guys get it. Anyway, I didn't have my phone with me, and I wanted to call my boyfriend to tell him what had happened, and that I was okay. The only numbers I had in my head were his, my dad's, and my sister's. I got a hold of a phone and dialed my boyfriend's number. When he picked up the phone, I felt a heartwarming relief when hearing his voice. I started talking quickly, telling him something like, "Hi, it's me. I just wanted to tell you I had problems with my heart again, and I'm at the hospital and everything is fine now." I was expecting an answer sort of like, "I'll be there as soon as I can." But what I got was, "Listen, I'm sorry that you're in the hospital, and it sounds like you really know me, but I have no idea who this is." And I thought he was joking with me, so I told him, "It's me. Lisa, your girlfriend. I cooked dinner for you and your daughter, like 2 days ago. Come on, stop joking." And he said with the most serious voice ever, "I am married to... Please don't ever call me again." I was shocked. I couldn't understand what was going on. I knew that he had divorced his ex-wife a few years before we met, so I could not understand at all what was going on. When I got back home, stuff in my apartment was different. Stuff was missing or had changed places, like pictures and paintings and such. I decided to Facebook my boyfriend, and we weren't even friends there anymore, and it said he was still married to his ex-wife. Had I imagined being his girlfriend, spending time with his daughter? No way. I knew stuff about him and his daughter that I could in no possible way know if we wouldn't have dated. I still had the feeling of being in the wrong body, that something was very wrong, still to this day, and I have thought about this so much. My theory is that I did die, and I somehow woke up in almost the same life, but in another dimension or something. I know it's crazy. Most of my life is the same. When it comes to my family, some memories that I have, it seems like I'm the only one having. In my old life, My mom died when she was 44, but in this life she died when she was 50, so it looks like she got a few more years here. After losing my boyfriend, that I love deeply still, and waking up in this, what seems to me, other world and other life, I have struggled with depression and dealing with figuring this out. If you enjoyed this Strange Happenings in Reality episode, leave us a comment, like and subscribe to the channel. New episodes air every Friday. Can you select all on the notification bell? We want you to catch us every week.